Hello guys, Stay Patient here, and it's time to take a look at this week's European store update and check out all the sales. I just want to start off by pointing out that yesterday it may have sounded as if I was being a bit dismissive about one of the guides we looked at during the PS Plus update for the April games. That was the Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time guide. I was comparing the estimated completion time on the guide to the average on the voting thread, and it may have come across as if I was speaking negatively about the guide itself. I really didn't mean it to come across like that. The author of the guide makes a lot of great guides. He's a follower of the channel. His name is Rustic Trophy Son. Like I say, he's very active on PlayStationTrophies.org and he does some great work on there. So if any of you watching the video felt like I was being negative about it, please don't think like that. Please don't let it affect your willingness to use the guide, because I'm sure it's very good. It just came across in the wrong way, so apologies to him for that. Now, like I say, today we're taking a look at the European store. So we have not really any new sales as such. But last week we did actually skip over the Only on PlayStation sale just because there was 31 pages of games and it didn't seem to me like there were that many great prices on there. But that's partly because I wasn't looking at the PS Plus prices. So what we're going to do this week is, because none of the sales have really changed, we're going to look at the games that we didn't cover last week. And we're going to start off by looking at the PlayStation Plus discounts, and then we're going to mop up anything that we didn't cover in the other sale, the exclusive sale that's still running for another week. Now, there's not really anything here on PS3 and Vita. The only game that showed up was Wipeout 2048, which is very difficult. That even showed up on the PS3 list. I'm not sure why, because it's a Vita game. But we actually have some good games here, and we have some good prices. I sort of feel bad for those in America, because the European store, once again, is the home of a much better sale than that on the North American one. We've got Bloodborne, which is a 7 out of 10 difficulty platinum based on the guide and the voting thread. It's a game I've not played, but it has a very high completion rating for the platinum on PSNprofiles.com. And I think the reason for that is because it's such a popular game. It's, very well made. A lot of people love the From Software titles. And it means that even though it's tricky, people are more willing to stick with it, and they're going to put the time in and sort of battle through it and get it done. So it's one of those games that is tough, but is very manageable from the looks of things. So don't let the kind of difficulty of the game put you off. You're probably going to be able to get through it if you put the effort in, and you'll have a lot of fun doing so. And this is quite a nice price as well. This is the Game of the Year edition, which comes with the Old Hunters DLC as well, which has its own set of trophies. We have Uncharted 4, which we barely even need to mention because most people will have played it by now. But obviously it's a great game, it's a fun trophy set, it's easy, it's the easiest Uncharted game out of all of them. Nice straightforward platinum. There are even some glitches you can use if you like, some exploits to make it quicker. But in general, it's going to be probably 20 or 30 hours depending on how you approach it. We have Guardians of the Galaxy here. This was actually new to me. This is a new Telltale game on its way. If we take a look at this is like a pre-order price basically. And this is quite a good price because usually when a new Telltale series starts, it's around £25. This one's $19. Obviously, it's a franchise that they haven't covered before, so maybe they're making it a bit cheaper to try and entice people in. When it's like a Walking Dead game or something, they tend to whack the price up a bit because it's a more familiar franchise. Even with Batman, everyone loves Batman, so they made that £25 to begin with. Guardians of the Galaxy, however, is probably not quite as big a franchise as things like Batman. But obviously it's grown in popularity recently with the film that was released, I think maybe a couple of years ago. But this is quite good, having a pre-order price for it, £15.99. It's bound to come down in price, and most people do like to wait until all the episodes are released so that they can play them all together. But I'm assuming the trophies are going to be the same as always, where you just earn them by playing through the game, and it's going to be quite nice trying out a new franchise. I do wish they'd take a bit of a break and kind of put some work into pushing their formula forward a bit, because all their games have been quite similar for a long time now, and they haven't really changed even since the new generation has started. All of their games nowadays are pretty much the same as they were on PS3. So I would like it if Telltale would put a bit of effort into revitalizing their approach to game design. But at the moment, they just seem to be pumping out game after game, and they're still enjoyable as long as they're well written and the stories are fun. Back to the main page here, we have The Last of Us Remastered, which is another 7 out of 10 difficulty platinum, although I didn't find it to be that tough. And I mean, this is the kind of game that you can just ignore the difficulty rating on because you're going to enjoy it so much. If you haven't played it already, you need to do so. This was one of the key titles in my list of must-have PS4 Platinums that I put up recently. And $11.99, this is literally one of the greatest games ever made. The remastered edition comes with all the DLC And it really is just a must play. Don't let the kind of estimated difficulty of the plat put you off in any way, because you won't look back and think, wow, that was hard. You'll just look back and think that was amazing, and you'll be able to get the trophies. There are some exploits you can use if you really have to, but however you approach it, just play the game. You have to. We've got God of War Remastered, or God of War 3 Remastered, sorry. We've spoken about this plenty of times on these weekly videos. It's been on sale over and over again, so we don't really need to cover it, but there are some glitches that can make it nice and quick and relatively easy. It's not a super straightforward platinum. The challenges can be a bit tricky, but it's really fun. It's really well made. The intro of the game is epic. It's one of the most epic intros to a game ever. Like climbing Mount Olympus on the back of a huge titan who is also being attacked by one of the gods. I forget which one it is, but you're having a boss battle on the back of this huge titan that's climbing a mountain. It's just absolutely insane, but it's so cool. We've got Ratchet and Clank. Takes about 15 hours, but this is another game that showed up in my must-have plats list. It's just so much fun. Just play this game. It's just absolutely brilliant, nice and easy. A couple of trophies revolving around sort of beating certain times in the races, the hoverboard races that you take part in throughout the game. But they're really not difficult. It's just a bit jarring when you first come across them, because everything else in the game has been so straightforward that you've just got through it in one attempt. You haven't had to retry anything. But when you get to the races, you might need to retry it a few times, which just kind of takes you by surprise to begin with, but you'll get through it nice and easily. It's still only like a 2 or 3 out of 10 difficulty. Until Dawn is a similar length, around 15 hours. This is meant to be a really good game. A lot of people speak highly of this. I haven't played it myself. But again, this is like one of those kind of decision-based games where you have branching paths. It's a bit of a horror title, but it's really straightforward. The voting thread gives it a 2 out of 10. So this will be a nice, easy, relatively quick, but enjoyable platinum as well, a bit like Ratchet and Clank. We've got the Gravity Rush games down here. Now, Gravity Rush Remastered, this is a game that I played on Vita a couple of times, and I've also done it on PS4 since. I need to do it on my account, actually. But that's a really good price, £8.24. It's a great game. And the platinum, I mean, it's not super easy, but it's very, very much doable for pretty much anyone. It's like a 4 out of 10 difficulty, I think. I didn't find anything too tough, but there was enough of a challenge to keep it interesting. And the DLC, which is quite difficult in places on Vita, is a lot easier on PS4. So if you're going to play the game at all, I would play it on the PS4. Gravity Rush 2 is one of the few games I haven't picked up yet that I really do want to buy and find time to play. Looks really good. It's quite a long-winded plat. A lot of people said it's between like 35 and maybe up to like 60 odd hours. A lot of people who kind of play it more casually have taken 60 to 70 hours or so. You can probably fly through it in about 40, but either way, it's quite a long-winded one, but it looks really enjoyable. And again, it's even given a lower difficulty rating than the first game. So this is definitely one for trophy hunters to keep an eye out on. It's really nice that Sony have released a sequel to Gravity Rush, even though it wasn't a massive seller. It speaks volumes about their willingness to stick with interesting new franchises that have a lot of potential, but maybe just need the chance to fulfill that potential. We have a bunch of games here that don't have trophies announced yet because they're kind of pre-order special prices. All of these pretty much, but we do have the Infamous games. Again, more games that showed up on my must-have platinums list. So we've got both games together here. They're both really enjoyable. They're both pretty straightforward. They do require a little bit of skill, but they're a lot of fun and, dead easy really if you take everything into account. And they're pretty quick too. The Second Son can be done in like a couple of days if you're playing it solidly, and First Light is even quicker. Journey here, the collector's edition, this is a great game, £5. It doesn't have a plat, it's really short, takes about 2 hours, but it's a really magical experience. It's something that you'll remember for a long time. It's very, very simple, but just really powerful for some reason. Alien Nation is a game that I did a few guides for because there weren't many people putting up guides, and I really enjoyed it. Some people might not. If you don't like repetition, you do end up doing the same content over and over again at different difficulties and in different styles. But I found it really enjoyable. There's a lot of looting, a lot of grinding and stuff like that. But it's a fun game to play. It's got a nice variety of different characters. You can play co-op. You've got all these different skills you can use. It's nice, fast-paced, solid action from Housemarque, who obviously made Resogun and Super Stardust and all those games, Dead Nation. And I do recommend this. It's quite a long-winded plat. In fact, it's a very long-winded one. It's like 50 hours plus. But if you've got the time for it, it's the ideal kind of game to have on the go in the background and just play it bit by bit, because there's no real story involved. It's not like you're going to forget things or have to restart because you've lost track of the plot or whatever. It's literally just one of those games that you can have on the go in the background, playing it every now and again, making a bit of progress here and there, and eventually you'll plug away at the platinum and pop it. We've got the Nathan Drake collection, obviously, the Uncharted trilogy, $12.99. This is a great trilogy. I actually stand by the fact that Uncharted 2 and 3, I believe, are better than Uncharted 4. Obviously, Uncharted 4 is great in some areas, like the graphics and everything is just amazing. But when it comes to pure gameplay, I really enjoyed 2 and 3. There are more memorable moments, I find. And they're the kind of games that are must-plays as well. And for $12.99 for 3 games that are all awesome, they've all got relatively straightforward platinums. You can use some glitches if you need to make them quicker or easier. But however you approach it, you should be able to make your way through and earn yourself 3 nice, cheap, very, very fun and fairly respectable plats. Let's carry on here and see what else we've got. We've got Bound, which does have a platinum, even though it's just one of those downloadable titles. It looks very difficult though. It's got a very, very low completion rating on psnprofiles.com, and I don't know, there's only one person that's voted on it on the PlayStationTrophies.org forum. There's no guide for it or anything. They've given it an 8 out of 10, but they said it's one of the most rewarding plats they've earned. So, I mean, if you're up for a challenge, maybe check it out. It looks really beautiful. It looks like a lot of fun. We've got Knack. And this is nice and cheap as well. All these games, in fact, when you factor in the PS Plus reductions, this is actually a really good sale. This is $4.79. This has been about this price on and off, during different sales for months, maybe years now. This was obviously the launch title that kind of fell flat because it didn't review very well. But it is actually a really respectable platinum to have. It's long-winded and it's difficult, despite it being a typical kind of kids game. So if you're after a challenge, and I think it's a challenge that's very much surmountable. There are ways that you can make it a little bit easier on yourself, not by glitching it or anything, but you can unlock Diamond Knack, which makes you a lot more powerful and it makes some of the rest of the trophies easier. But it just takes a lot of work. We've got the Order 1886. Of course, this is a dead easy, dead quick platinum. It takes about 8 hours to complete, maybe even quicker, to be honest. In my opinion, it's not a great game and it didn't review very well, but a lot of people did enjoy it. The style of it is cool and the graphics are absolutely phenomenal. So I can understand why people had fun with it, and so don't write it off based on the reviews necessarily. I think obviously when people review a game, they base it on the price that it's selling for when it first launches. So I think people would have been disappointed if they bought this at like $50 or £40 because it's got about 3 or 4 hours of actual gameplay, all the rest is cutscenes. So people would have felt hard done by. But now, obviously, with it being £8.49, it's a case of, well, why not? You're going to get some easy trophies out of it, even if you don't enjoy the game. And chances are, because you haven't spent a lot of money on it, you will have a bit of fun. It's not a terrible game. It was just a bit disappointing, I suppose. We've got a Micro Machines game on its way. I think this is a pre-order price. Although, yes, only available, let's see, is available in like 3 months, is that? Wow, this is a real early pre-order price. I remember playing these games on PS1, one of the Micro Machines games anyway, and it was a lot of fun. So I might check this out. That could be cool. But there's nothing, there's no trophies that have been announced yet or anything like that. That's pretty much everything. We got Killzone Shadowfall. Obviously, this is another launch title. It wasn't as good as the PS3 versions of Killzone. It was really beautiful and it played well, but just the story and the scenarios were a little bit unimaginative. I kind of kept starting it. I started the game about 3 times and I got a certain way through it and I just kind of ended up getting bored. But it's a very respectable platinum, and I do very much respect the developers for adding the ability to play against bots, because they know that the online is getting quieter and quieter, so it's harder to get the online-based trophies, but you can now earn all the online trophies by playing against bots in the bot zone, it's called, so that's a really cool touch, and I think more developers should take that approach. But if we head back, we are going to come back to the main page here. And we're just going to point out the deal of the week. This is quite interesting. Mortal Kombat X is a game that I assumed would be very, very difficult. And it probably would be for me because I'm not a big fighting game player. But when I checked the trophy guide and the voting threads, it's actually given only a 5 out of 10 on the guide itself. And then on the voting thread, I think it's a 7 average. Although it's very varied up and down the Yeah, right up and down the scale there. So it's very, very difficult to tell. People voting for 10 are probably people like me that aren't big fighting game players. People voting lower probably play a lot of fighting games. But it looks like the kind of game that isn't quite as insurmountable as the previous Mortal Kombat games, which have been literally hundreds of hours and 10 out of 10 difficulty. So if you're a big fan of them, then that could be a worthwhile purchase for you. If we just take a look at the PlayStation exclusive sale here, most of the games in this sale we've already discussed because they showed up in the PS Plus reductions. So we're going to skip most of them because we've already covered them, but there are a few games that stand out that weren't mentioned in the other sale because they're not any cheaper for PS Plus members. Now, The Last Guardian is the first one. This is the kind of game that I really have nothing to share with you on when it comes to trophies because I haven't played it myself. And on the actual, on the forums, on the voting thread for difficulty, it's literally the game with the most widely varied group of opinions that I've ever seen. There are votes for basically every single number from 1 to 10, and they're pretty much even all up and down the scale. So it's very, very difficult to tell how tough this is actually going to be, and there's no guide for it yet. So if you're a guide writer and you fancy putting one together for this, then a lot of people would probably really appreciate it. It looks fun. Obviously, it was a game that people were waiting for a long, long time. And I don't know if it's fully delivered what everyone was hoping for, but it does look enjoyable. We've also got The Last of Us Left Behind Standalone Edition here, but just bear in mind that this doesn't count as a standalone trophy set. If you play this, then it will add The Last of Us. As far as I know, it will add the main game to your trophy collection as well. So you'd only have a very small percentage of completion if you just played this. You can't play this without adding The Last of Us to your trophy list. We've got Until Dawn Rush of Blood. This is one of the VR titles that you're only going to be able to play in VR, I believe. But again, I can't really share much of an opinion on this. I've not played it yet. And the difficulty voting thread is very varied here. We've got some 8s and 9s, but we've also got some 4s and a 1. So I really don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys. If anyone's played it, if you want to post in the comments and let us know what it's like when it comes to difficulty and time requirement. What else have we got that wasn't on the other list? We've got the Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls collection. Obviously, the two games on their own are a little bit cheaper, but if you want both, obviously it makes sense to buy the collection because it works out cheaper that way. It's, £12 for both or £8 each. I believe Beyond Two Souls is a fairly straightforward platinum. I think it's somewhere around 20 to 30 hours to complete. Heavy Rain is a game that I've got a lot of experience with. I've platted this a few times. And it's the kind of game that can take a long time if you're playing it for the first time. But if you know what to do and, maybe you're following a guide or maybe you've played it before, then you could technically fly through it in like 10 to 15 hours. I think the fastest is probably like 13 hours is possible. So you could, in theory, you could do it in one day, which is insane. But for most people, it's going to be somewhere between like 20 and 30 hours. I am planning to put up a guide for this game, but it's going to take a long time because it's, quite involved. There's a lot of things to take into account, and it's a long game to record and complete and then edit down so it's, a viewable length. It's not too long. But that's something that might show up on the channel in the near future at some point. But yeah, it's nice and straightforward at least. Once you know what you're doing, there's nothing really that difficult, apart from one trophy, which involves driving down a street, or like a motorway or highway, or whatever you call it in America. And you have to basically fulfill a bunch of QTE events and do it perfectly. And there's a lot that come up quite quickly. Some of them are very touchy when it comes to actually registering. So that's really the only trophy in the game that's pretty tough to complete. But once you've done that, everything else is a walk in the park. Gravity Rush 2 there again. We've got Drive Club. Now, this has actually been cheaper in the past. We've got Drive Club on its own for $7.99. Now, we did have the game with the DLC, the Season Pass, for $7.99 at one point a few months ago. And that was an amazing deal. But it's a great game. It's really fun. Just a warning that if you play Drive Club Bikes and do the DLC for it, some of the Bikes DLC is actually car related. So when you play that, you need to load up the normal version of Drive Club to be able to do the car DLCs, and that's going to add the Drive Club trophy list to your account as well as the Bikes one. So it's a bit of an odd one where you can either 100% Drive Club on its own, or you can 100% both together. You can't just 100% Drive Club Bikes without adding Drive Club. It's a bit weird. They basically added too much DLC to this one. They reached the cap, the maximum that Sony allows for DLC, and there is a ton of it. The DLC is quite tough in places, but the Platinum itself is pretty easy. We've got Drive Club VR. I think this is cheaper if you own Drive Club itself, or sorry, if you own the season pass for Drive Club, then you do get money off Drive Club VR. I think that's still... no, here it is. Look, PSVR game. This is the upgrade. Season pass upgrade. Yeah, so it's £10. If you've got the season pass, you can pay £10 to get Drive Club VR. If you haven't got the Drive Club season pass, then it's going to cost you, let's have a look, maybe 20, if it'll load. There we go. Yeah, £20. So yeah, VR is really cool. I've only played a few races in it, but it's the kind of game that I put on whenever friends come around and they want to try out the VR. It's a lot of fun. Let's have a look. I'm not going to go through all the pages because it gets like less and less interesting as we go through, and I don't want the video to be too long. But what else have we got here that hasn't shown up? Not really much. Let's skip forward to page 3 and just cover anything that's important here. The Unfinished Swan is amazing. I love that game. So good. There's no plat, but it's just so good. Yeah, we've got some other games. I'll probably leave you to do a bit of your own research here because, like I say, this video is going to end up being very long. But yeah, I think that's everything we're going to cover today, guys. I want to say thanks very much for watching. It is a good sale, so you're probably going to end up picking up some games, and a lot of them will probably be AAA games that are selling for a decent price at the moment. I'm going to pick up 1 or 2. Hopefully have some fun with them. I look forward to catching you over the weekend for a couple more videos. I have 2 actually lined up. It's Thursday today. I have 1 lined up for tomorrow. I'm going to be putting up the Nero Platinum Guide tomorrow. And I'm also going to have another episode of the Trophy Hunters Hangout ready for Saturday. So that's going to be a video every single day this week, which is pretty cool. But thanks very much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you very soon. Cheers.